Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm Sakshi, and I welcome you to Amalthea, presented by JSW and associate sponsor Hindalco. Amalthea is IIT Gandhinagar's annual technical summit and India's first completely student-run technical summit. With the vision of gaining prosperity through technology, this year the theme for 12th edition of Amalthea is unifying minds and fostering ingenuity. I thank our title sponsor, JSW Group, Hindalco, Gujarat Energy Development Agency, Gujarat Infrastructure Development Board for their support for today's webinar. Today's webinar is planned for the duration of an hour, and if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box. We'll have a short Q&A round towards the end of the webinar. Before starting, I'd like to take some time to introduce today's topic, that is the International Solar Alliance. It is initiated by India and it is an alliance of 124 tropical countries. It is a platform for increasing deployment of solar energy technologies to bring energy access, ensuring energy security, and driving energy transition in its member countries. It strives to develop and deploy cost effective and transformational energy solutions so that the member countries can develop low carbon growth trajectories. Being a global platform, its partnerships with multilateral development banks, development financial institutions, private and public sector organizations, civil society, and many other international organizations is very key to delivering the change that it seeks to see in the world. We are much more than delighted to have Mr. Amit Sir with us today. He is the Chief of Unit for Programs and Project Implementation Cluster at the International Solar Alliance. He has an extensive experience of 25 years in working with key ministries of Government of India. Before joining ISA, he was heading the business unit as Executive Director with Energy Efficiency Services Limited, which is also known as EESL. He has also served as the CEO of EPSL Trigeneration Private Limited. In his current role, he is leading a highly skilled team of professionals responsible for facilitating programmatic support to ISA member countries for implementing solar projects and scaling up solar energy deployment. And apart from strategizing the further course of solar energy, he is an avid biker and loves to golf. Please welcome Mr. Amit Kumar Kaushik. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Sakshi. Thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity to talk to you all. My dear young friends, young bright minds, while I'm interacting with you, actually, I'm interacting with my future. You are the future. You are the next generation who are going to take the things forward. A very, very important role is that you carry on your shoulders. The energy space, I would like to make it a little informal. I don't want to sound like one of your professors giving lecture to you today. So I would like to make it a little informal. I will just like you to take you through to International Solar Alliance. What does it do? How does it do? And what is the basis and philosophies which we follow in International Solar Alliance? And I have a very small presentation to introduce you to International Solar Alliance. But before I go there are two, 3 points which I would like to make. The energy sector is a very, very important sector for the growth of humanity. Any and every aspect of life is dependent on some or other form of energy. Having said so, while on one hand, we are having code red for humanity, all of you must have heard the recent report about the climate change, global warming. On the other hand, we still have 800 million people across the globe who does not have access to electricity. And 600 million people out of this 800 million remains in Africa. Business as usual. This figure is going to increase to 1 billion people in coming few years. That means on one side, we have a challenge of climate. On the other hand, we have a challenge of people not having access to electricity. That is where innovation takes center space. How this energy space or energy ecosystem is going to be having three important components. The first is digitalization. When I talk about digitalization, that could be the AMI, advanced metering infrastructure, the smart meters, or various other value addition, or digitalization of generation and transmission, monitoring, distribution networks as a larger picture altogether. Digitalization. The second most important is decarbonization. We have to decarbonize our energy sector. How do we do it? By cutting down or reducing, and at the end of the day, eliminating use of the fossil fuels. But for doing that decarbonization, we have to have another sources which we can use for supplying energy to humanity. That means, again, innovation plays an important role here in digitalization, in decarbonization. And the next very important aspect comes is decentralization. Probably, can we take the source of energy to the individuals, to the homes of people? Rooftop solar is a clear cut example that you are generating energy, electricity on your own roofs if you use rooftop solar. So decentralized generation of energy is also a very important pillar of 3 Ds of energy space of future. Having said so, all these 3 Ds have immense scope of innovation. This is what I just wanted to put you through, that these 3 Ds are going to be the future energy economy and energy ecospace. Now, I would like to share a little presentation about International Solar Alliance. Sakshi, kindly let me know if my screen is visible so that I can.
Yes, sir, your screen is visible.
Okay, is the presentation visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Is the slide moving?
Yes, it is moving.
Yeah, this is the biggest issue. So on the online and video conferencing, so my generation is probably the generation which have actually used those cassette players and that five and a half or 5.14 inch floppies and the 3.5 floppies. And your generation is probably the last who has actually seen it. And that, to the next generation, they would not even understand how a cassette player or a cassette used to look like. So this is what is the innovation. And if we talk about the pandemic has made all of us experts on video conferencing. I remember a few years back, not as late as 2019, when I used to have video conferencing with my colleagues sitting in UK, with another group company of ours. I used to request my IT team to set up a video conferencing, and they used to come up with huge cameras and the boxes, and they used to tell that, no, this is how it is. I used to feel, wow, what a great achievement we have been able to do. But the pandemic has made the life totally other way around. Now even the children are doing their classes on the video conferencing from handheld devices to their iPads to the laptops to the desktops. Look at that, how fast this changes has taken place. So innovation here, again, innovation had made a commercial sense, and also it has helped much of the humanities to at least continue with some kind of routine, whether it is education or whether it is industry. Of course, not the production, but at least the consultancy services or the offices could run. So with this, young minds, I would like you to just pay little attention that what is International Solar Alliance. It is essentially an intergovernmental treaty based international organizations. That means the members of International Solar Alliance are sovereign government. What is ISA doing? ISA is facilitating energy transition at a global level, energy security at national level, and energy access at local level. So energy access, energy security, and energy transition, these are the three main important factors. As we speak, ISA has 101 member countries. The very recently in COP26, United States of America has become 101 country. So this is the key milestones for ISA 2015. It was launched in COP21 in Paris. The founding ceremony of ISA was held in 2018. Very recently, we had a fourth assembly of ISA in 2021, October 21, and our Honorable Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Johnson have launched Green Grid Initiative and One Sun, One Word, One Grid during COP 26. Now, the mission to help member country to enhance energy access security and later on lead to the energy transition. Every country has a different need. If we go to some of the countries who do not have grid infrastructure, then having a concept of solar park probably may not be a cost economic viable solution for that, or and also it will take longer time. So what are the needs of the country are to be assessed first, and then accordingly the solutions are provided. International Solar Alliance is working towards that. How does governance structure of International Solar Alliance works? India is the president and France is the co-president. International Solar Alliance has 4 regions: Asia Pacific region, Africa region, Latin America and Caribbean region, and Europe and other regions. These 4 regions have 2 vice presidents each. In Asia Pacific, it is Fiji and Nauru. Africa, it is Mauritius and Niger. Latin America and Caribbean region, it is Cuba and Guyana. Europe, it is United Kingdom and Netherlands. ISA has further governance structure by standing committees and 4 regional committees. And then we have ISA Secretariat headed by Director General. At present, Dr. Ajay Mathur, a known thought leader in the climate environment and ecosystem, is heading the organization as Director General. The strategic framework for global solarization, what ISA follows is what are the basic issues? The basic issues, as I mentioned earlier, energy access, energy security, and energy transition. So what becomes the priority areas for all this? Analytics and advocacy, the capacity building for the countries, and programmatic support, particularly to LDC and SIDS member countries. This is how International Solar Alliance is facilitating member countries to scale up the solar applications through analytics and advocacy, capacity building, and programmatic support, as I just mentioned. So for analytics and advocacy, we carry out the research, we carry out the study with our partner consultants and partner organizations, and also ISA does it through various forms. Then we carry out and take out the reports. For example, ease of doing solar. Ease of doing solar covers almost 80 countries and does the analysis of those 80 countries in terms of how the solar investment and solar technology and solar scaling up is taking place. Then there are flagship global advocacy initiative. One I have just mentioned, GGGI OSOWOC, One Sun, One Word, One Grid initiative, with Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Johnson have launched recently in COP26. Another flagship advocacy initiative is mobilizing $1 trillion USD for solar investments by 2030, and WRI, BNF, SMAP, Bloomberg Philanthropies have been working on this for preparation of the roadmap. Capacity building is another challenging and most important task. You would appreciate that even if we go set up a solar water pumping solution in one of the African countries, in a remote area, in a village, after 15-20 days, if this water pumping set stops functioning, the what happens? This stops functioning and nobody is able to repair that because there is no capacity. The company which installed the company has installed the system. 15 days they maintained, and then they went off and something went wrong. Nobody was able to repair it. So what happens? The consumer, the user, lose trust in the technology. When I say lose trust in the technology, that is most important thing to happen for acceptability of technology. Then this technology will not be accepted by the users. It requires a lot of efforts again. They will go back to their diesel pumping sets, and then situation is back to normal. So capacity building in the country for local people, for bankers, for assessing the projects and sending loan, giving the loans and debt, also for engineering level to design the projects. At every level, this capacity building is required because local trained manpower is most important for any country to have the technology sustainability. Then we have programmatic support for member countries. We are trying to develop a blended finance mechanism where it can be used for financing the project, because not many countries do have good economic conditions and stability to invest in energy sector, particularly the solar or renewables. They have other priorities, particularly the social sector, the medicine, the education, and other aspects of it. That is where International Solar Alliance facilitate member countries by providing them reach to finance, access to finance, and also providing technical assistance by doing their pre-feasibility reports, detailed project reports, doing probably the tender on certain cases on the behalf of the country, do the demand aggregation. That is how, for the programmatic support, International Solar Alliance facilitate the member countries. Now, you would all appreciate that such a huge world with such huge population, such huge land mass, so many countries, alone, any single organization, it is very difficult to reach out everywhere. So we do have our partner organizations. This is the list of partner organizations. You can just have a look at it: World Bank, EIB, WRI, UN, UNIDO, ARENA, European Union. So many of them in different areas. So we have partnered with these organizations and many other, and in collaboration with these organizations, we are working in those member countries. So currently we are running 9 programs of International Solar Alliance. One is scaling of solar applications for agriculture use, affordable finance at scale, scaling up solar mini grids, solar parks, rooftop, solarizing heating and cooling system, scaling solar e-mobility and storage. And very recently, we have launched 2 programs, that is solar PV battery and waste management. This is going to be a big problem in times to come, because once this solar plants start reaching the verge of their life cycle and they start retiring, it will be difficult for us to manage the waste which it will generate. And the next best thing for the future, that is solar for green hydrogen. All of you are aware of this green hydrogen, and if this comes from solar energy, probably cutting down fossil fuel and bringing this particular aspect is going to help humanity in a great way. This is just a snapshot of which all countries International Solar Alliance have been working, right from Peru, Paraguay, Cuba in Latin America, to many countries in Africa, till in Oceanic Asia Pacific region, Nauru, Tuvalu, Tonga, Fiji. Like that, many countries International Solar Alliance has been working with the countries and facilitating them. This is another snapshot of the demonstration project which International Solar Alliance has funded as the pilot project, 47 projects in 27 countries. This is the capacity building initiative. We have trained more than 1,300 officials from the member countries, from across the regions and globe. And very recently at COP26, as I just mentioned, that GGGI also was launched. ISA and Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet Partnership has signed an MOU, an agreement to move forward. Also, the International Solar Alliance has launched Solar Campus. That is again a very interesting publication. And United States of America became 101st member country of International Solar Alliance. So this is in nutshell is what International Solar Alliance is and how it operates. Well, Sakshi, am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you're audible, but the presentation has stopped.
Yeah, presentation has stopped. All right.
Yeah.
So that was the presentation from my end. And now I am open for little discussion if you people have any questions about it, because I don't want to make it a monologue where only I am speaking and you are listening. No. As I mentioned, I would rather like to listen to you. But I would like to stress one point here. Those three Ds I have mentioned, or whatever I have mentioned, the scope for innovation is immense if we have to look after the climate change and also scale up this renewable energy. Thank you very much, Sakshi and Team Amalthea, for giving me this opportunity to speak on this forum. It's a privilege. Thank you very, very much.
So it's our privilege to have you here. I think we should begin with the Q&A session. As a reminder to the audience, you can put your questions in the Q&A or the chat box. Meanwhile, I have one question to you.
Sure, please go.
Yeah, I saw that UK was also a member of ISA, but I'm not sure how the countries which are not tropical countries will benefit from solar energy, because as far as I know, the weather in UK is not very, I will say, sunny weather.
Yeah,
Yeah.
conducive for solar energy. Absolutely right. But a very important question. So actually, answering your question is, why should UK become a member of International Solar Alliance? I mentioned about collaborative approach. The climate change threat is for humanity, is not for a particular country. Developed
Indeed.
country do have, they certainly do have a responsibility to assist developing countries in various regions to scale up their renewable energy. And developed countries do have funding and also the technology. And developing countries also, as I mentioned, the 600 million people in Africa do not have access to electricity. They are human beings. Do they not deserve, or do they not have right to access to electricity? Then for that, you need technology, you need funding. So that is where many developed countries are joining International Solar Alliance to strengthen its programs and facilitation to those developing member countries where they can reach out through ISA platform. And Triple GI, Green Grid Initiative, and OSOVOG is one such thing where, as you must have heard, Prime Minister Modi is talking that sun never sets. If sun never sets, while in India we are having night, somewhere and on the earth the sun is shining. So can we not have the energy transported or transmitted from that sunshine area which is right now to India? So that is the whole concept of Green Grid Initiative and also.
So one more additional question.
Yeah.
In India, as we know that there are many companies which generate power. We have private companies and we have public sector companies. But I think there is only one POSOCO company which transmits power, and it's more or less a monopoly. So even if we decide that we have, in India, it's monopoly of one company. Then transmitting power from one country to the other, it's a very difficult task. So, is there any target, like for up till 2040 or 2050, and how much power or how many transmission lines will we, uh, like, how will we give incentives to the countries to increase the number of transmission lines?
Very good question, Shakti, once again. Okay, so let me take it this way. First, let us understand this energy landscape. Okay, even in India, the energy generation, transmission, distribution, there used to be state electricity boards earlier, only one. Then, because of inefficiencies seeping in, they were distributed into three different companies: generation company, transmission company, and distribution company. Even in the state governments, the trifurcation of SEBs happen. At the government of India level, there are generators, and Power Grid was the main transmission operator for the country at central level. However, as the time moved on, the generation also was privatized. That means private players can come, bring the investment, bring the latest technology, and can set up the generating stations. And energy is purchased or traded in through the form of PPAs, power purchase agreements. Then for transmission sector also, it was open for private sector. So there are many private sector players who are actually operating in Indian transmission sector. So it is not that any particular company is having a monopoly now. There are provisions where private sector players can come. Now coming to the second question, part of your question, inter-country transmission. Before that, I come back to India. Before I jump over there, energy exchange. You must have heard about the term. Okay, they like stock exchange. Even energy is traded as an open market through energy exchange. Anybody, the discom, can purchase from the exchanges or even the industrial user through open access. I will not explain it in detail because there's a chapters in itself, but there are energy exchanges is operating in India. Then comes bilateral between two countries. India is having with Bhutan. Bhutan is generating hydroelectricity, and India is transmitting that electricity to India because Bhutan does not have that much of requirement. So any excess electricity Bhutan is selling to India, that electricity is transmitted to India. So that is classic example between two countries. It is happening also with the India and Nepal. In Middle East region, there are many countries, they have this sharing and grid is already existing. In Africa region also, you would be surprised to know then there is exists a Western African power pool. There exists a South African power pool where the Western African countries have joined hands together to transport or the transmit electricity and trade the electricity between two countries or between multiple countries. So this is a long drawn process where you rightly mentioned that countries at a political level have to come together to decide this and execute this. But in pockets, it is already existing. Like if I can take the name, there is a company called Sun Cable. You people can research on the web. They are trying to set up the gigawatt of sun solar powered solar PV plant in Australia. And through undersea cable, they want to bring that electricity to Singapore. So that is again a classic example that if Australia has that kind of land which Singapore does not have, does it make commercial viability? Does it make a commercial sense? May not be now. Probably 5 years from now, probably 10 years from now, with the cost of technology coming down, with the storage available. So there is a lot of work is going on already on these kind of projects that we have to start looking between inter-country and then intercontinents. I hope it answers your question.
Yes, that answers my question.
Thanks.
According to the website, it says that ISA has a particular focus on delivering impact in countries categorized as least developed countries and the small island developing states.
Absolutely.
And like you mentioned in your presentation, usually these countries lack funds. And even if the major countries like UK or USA are ready to provide them funds, at some point they'll have to return it. So how does ISA plan to focus and deliver impact in such countries?
Okay. So, to this is your question or somebody else is asking? Your
Yeah,
question.
yeah, this is my question.
Your question. Nobody wants to ask any question. Good, excellent. So everybody has slept, listening to presentations, lecture, right? So I mean,
So I'll take it this way that people are overwhelmed after listening to the presentation.
yeah, thanks. Okay. Anyway, on a lighter side, so point is LDC and SIDS. I'm not sure whether you heard the name of Kiribati. Okay, it is spelled KIRIBATI. In your spare time, please research. They are all. This country is an island country and has already started submerging under the sea. The climate effect is already affecting this country. And as the recent report talks about, if with the levels, you all must aware, I will not dwell upon this, 1.5 degree to 3 degrees, 1.8 degree, if we increase the temperature from the industrialization level and all these things, that means that is not just a climate change, that is death sentence to many of these countries who are suffering this. Okay, so LDC and SIDS countries are important focus. Now you asked a very important question. They don't have money and somebody has to give money. But then how does this money comes? Right? There are two, three ways of doing it. One is something called grant. Okay? Grant, some of the donors, pension funds, children fund, and many of the philanthropy and many of the banks like World Bank, ADB, African Development Bank, European Investment Bank, all they all have certain amount as grant. The grant is mainly used for pilot or demonstration projects, which countries need not return back. It is to showcase the technology to the countries that look, this is existing, this is how this model is going to work, and this is how we can make this project bankable. Because at the end of the day, everything cannot survive on the grant. They have to come, the industry has to thrive. For example, if you take example of India, your own beautiful country, 2011 National Solar Mission was launched, and we are in 2021. In 2011, the tariff was somewhere to the tune of 30 cents. Okay, today we are almost less than 3 cents in 10 years. There was no industry here. They were not industrialists who were planning mega solar parks and gigawatts, megawatts. Today, you see every second industry is working towards renewable and particularly in solar. In 10 years, in just a decade, India has achieved so much. And now, is the government of India investing? No. Is the state government investing? No. Is the private sector which is bringing the money for setting up the plant, bringing the technology, setting up the plant, and then selling the electricity to the distribution companies. All they need is payment security mechanism, because the life of the solar plant is around 20 to 25 years. The PPAs are generally signed for 20 to 25 years. That is where a different type of mechanism happens. Then comes blended finance facility, what I just mentioned in one of the slides. One is that grant for demonstration project. One is that concessional funding, which can go to country, and country can use that funding and they can repay it in a very, very long period with very less interest rate, something to the tune of 0.3% to 1.2% or something like that, right? So countries can do that. And if countries can prepare a better policy and regulatory framework, then countries need not worry about funding. Then the private sector is more than happy to fund the projects and set up the funds there. So regulatory and policy framework in the country, like India has been consistently changing the policy and regulatory framework for the betterment of this sector. That is why private sector investment kept on coming. So many countries are doing it. Many countries are yet to start. International Solar Alliance takes these best practices and tell those countries that, look, this is how it can be done. If you need our help, we will help you to prepare all the documentation, policies. That's what we call it, policy advocacy, and also regulatory framework. And probably we will request industry also to come in. Probably we will ask all the banks and other donors, MDBs and DFIs to fund the projects. So that is what is the essentially role of International Solar Alliance in facilitating this entire thing. I hope that answers you.
Yeah, indeed, it answers. We have a question from Dhiren. He says that one of the Ds that you mentioned is decentralization. What incentives is the government of India providing the citizens for decentralization of solar energy?
Okay. So let me give you a little concept of decentralization. The state of Maharashtra has agriculture. Okay, let me put it this way. Agriculture is one of the sector which is essential for us or no? For our food requirement?
Yes, it is.
You may not, I mean, it's okay if you don't go to college, but you need to food. It's
Yep.
okay if you don't work, but you still need food. So for surviving of human being, the food is required, and food comes from the agriculture sector. Then agriculture sector is quite a lot energy intensive. Where decentralization can help agriculture sector, that is where you young people can actually innovate a lot of things. For example, solar water pumping, it's already there. Solar dryers for drying the crop. Okay, solar cooling for keeping, or solar cold storage for keeping their produce like potatoes, orange, or any cash crops which can, be shelf life is very less. The solar cooling solution works very fine for them. Okay, now government of India spends $13 billion, almost 1,000 crore rupees. No, no, 1,000 crore rupees on power subsidy to agriculture sector a year. Okay, a year. Understand? Government of Maharashtra spends almost 9,000 crore a year only on power sector subsidies. But if, and how does it happen? How does it work? The government of Maharashtra purchases electricity from the thermal power plants or solar or wherever. The ACOS, average cost of supply of electricity, comes around 7.48 rupees INR. And once they supply, how much is realized, how much goes into subsidy, you all are aware. Almost everything goes out of the subsidy if it is provided to the agriculture sector. Government of Maharashtra has done a wonderful scheme, and government of India has also brought out a wonderful scheme called Kusum scheme. You can have a look at the Kusum scheme during your free times. Okay, and government of Maharashtra is also working on that. Mukhyamantri Saur Wahini scheme, something like that, if I'm able to pronounce it correctly. So there is an agriculture feeder. Now, how does it operationalize? There is an agriculture feeder. That means the feeder is connecting only to agriculture consumers. If you solarize this feeder, that means you put small solar plants wherever land is available. So government of Maharashtra does not need to buy electricity at 7.48. This solar generated electricity is infused into the agriculture feeder at 3 rupees. That means how much is the saving? 4 rupees 48 paise. I mean, almost 50% saving. That means decentralized solar power plants, 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt, 0.8 megawatt, 5 megawatt, wherever government barren land is there. There is no land acquisition from anybody. Wherever government barren land is there, even at the substations, these small plants can be set up, and this electricity can be used for farmer. Now, how does farmer get benefited? Daytime electricity. Otherwise, poor guys have to keep on be awake till night when they will receive the electricity to run their pumps. Daytime electricity, clean energy, reliable energy. That means sun is there, energy is being generated. It will reach to them. And when it is at every very near to their pumping stations and all, the reliable electricity like drop of voltage and all is also does not take place. That means machine runs better. The third thing, the government does not have to spend much on to distribution infrastructure. That means they don't have to put so many transformers and all this infrastructure to take the reliable electricity till last mile. So that is how this decentralized concept works. If we are able to give the energy in a decentralized forms for farmers, for agriculture sector, and for area where grid cannot reach, can we not create a solar mini grid where say 20-30 houses in a village can be solarized for their basic needs? Also, a black carbon. Most of the Indian women are still subjected to cooking which is not clean. They still burn those woods and those cow dung thing. So if we can give some kind of energy access to them through this solar, which is cheaper, and we can give them induction stoves, they can do their cooking on that. It'll be clean cooking. So the amount of money can be spent on the health related issues can be reduced, and we can have a healthy generation living.
I remember my grandmother using the solar cooking some device for cooking rice, and as a child, I was very fascinated. But now it seems,
Absolutely. So this is where I'm trying to tell you, youngsters, that you bright mind have to create innovations in these fields,
yeah,
which is going to create a social impact. And there is a lot of scope, lot of scope. I'm telling you, more than hundreds of kind of implements and usable devices you can create for agriculture sector, for villages. There is a lot to do it. And it is not that you are designing some panel and all this. It's required a lot of digitalization, lot of software solutions. Like for example, I remember there's a lot of argument on solar water pumping over extraction of water from the ground. That if you give farmer a solar water pump, they will just switch on. They will not bother about this. Can you create a solution for this? Yes, you can. Why can't you use an artificial intelligence to control the output of the solar water pump, depending on the size of land which I have? Also, the sizing of pump can be done. If I have 1 acre of land as a farmer, you size the pump as per my requirement and the type of crops I do. So can you not develop a business model uh, associated with the technical model and then create a product for that? And online monitoring through artificial intelligence, probably hundreds of pumps. You don't have to go to village. Hundreds of pumps communicating through IoT and sending data to you, and you can actually control. You can switch on, switch off the pump also from sitting in some place in one of your headquarters. On one side, you are giving farmer the education and the equipment, everything. You are facilitating farmer, but you are also controlling that over exploitation should not take place. That is also, you are not controlling the farmer, you are actually assisting the farmer, because probably farmer would not know how to do it. You are assisting the farmer by giving this solution, solar dryer, solar cooling as a service. Farmer may not have that much of money. Our farmers are poor. So probably you can design some portable solar coolers, which some big farmers who have big money, they can buy in the village, and as a cooperative society, they can rent out only duration of the crop for 10 days, 15 days, what farmer wants to use. Why should farmer invest for the entire year? So all I'm trying to do is ignite your minds. You are brilliant minds. Okay, you are the future for our generation. If time travel was possible, I would say that I'm traveling time and talking to my future here. You all have a great responsibility, because the times are a little difficult because of the climate change and the gaps. These gaps are huge, and filling those gaps require lot and lot of innovation.
yeah. Before taking the next question, what is your message or vision for Amalthya as a the technical summit and the fellow students? Maybe just 3-4 lines.
Keep on a good job. When you talk, when you interact, when you share the ideas, that is where the growth lies. I'm not sure anything, whatever I spoke, made any sense to you, but I'm 100% sure at least few of the points are there which you were certainly not aware. And probably few years back, I was also not aware unless I went out and met the farmers while doing this decentralized solar thing there for them. Keep on talking, keep on discussing. This Amalthea is a very important platform where you all can share the thought process and vision for the future among yourselves, and also by inviting industry leaders and the organizations and understand what they are doing. So
Yeah,
my
my ears
comments and
feel
comments.
blessed to hear that from you. Uh, uh, Sorry, did I interrupt you? Hello. Uh, Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there was some connectivity issue. Nevertheless, we'll take the next question. The question is from Shreya. Uh, like you said, farmers might not be aware about how to use the device. Similarly, many people are not aware about the climate change phenomena going on right now. So, does ISA plan does ISA plan to encourage them to think about climate change or spread awareness in general?
So it is again the collaboration and engagement with the stakeholders. We do carry out the webinars. It's open for all. We do publicize them in advance. We try to take this knowledge to the people, not only in India, because ISA essentially does not focus on India. ISA focus mainly to the other member countries across the geography of Latin America, Africa, Asia Pacific region. We carry out all this information dissemination webinars, and also the workshops and country missions we undertake. We do this thing.
Yeah, we have one more question from Karina.
Yeah.
What is the current approximate percentage of solar energy used in India and abroad, and what is your expected utilization in the next decade?
Okay, so I would like you to go through the website of Power Ministry. It will give you a total holistic picture of India, that what is the capacity of renewable. Here, I would like to just put you through not the data. I'm not here to talk to you about the numbers and figures. I would like to give you a little more deep insight of that so that you understand it a little better. There is something called capacity installed. A 5 megawatt of solar plant installed does not generate electricity of 5 megawatt. It has something called CUF, capacity utilization factor. It generates somewhere around 18 to 21% is the CUF. So look at the capacity, installed capacity, maybe in thousands of megawatt, but how much of actual energy you are receiving out of it. That is one part of it. So renewable, particularly hydro, wind, solar, nuclear is actually kind of considered as an alternate energy. It's not nuclear, it is not fossil, rather polluted, kind of clean energy, but it is not renewable energy. But your hydro, solar, and wind are the main component of this. The Prime Minister Modi, very recently in COP26, if you all have heard him, has given a very ambitious target set up for India, that is 500 gigawatt. It is quite a huge number. Okay, so you can go through entire data about the globe, what is happening in the solar and all. Any specific questions or any specific requirement any one of you have, please feel free to me to contact me, reach out to me, and team Amalthea, Sakshi, and Aditya, you all have my email ID. Please reach out to me. I will see that either me or some of my colleagues from ISA will certainly guide you, assist you, and help you.
There is just one last question
Sure.
from Ishani. As per my knowledge, the basic material is mainly available in China. Will that affect the progress of solar energy worldwide, given that China is increasing its economy at a high rate?
Excellent question. Excellent question. The entire world after pandemic, you must have heard, is facing the supply chain issue. In India, many industries are announcing big investment plans for manufacturing of the solar equipments. Essentially, it has the panels and the modules, cells, inverters, wires, and all these things. It was economy of scale, it was all working out. In fact, you would be surprised that there are hundreds of manufacturers still existing in India, but of course, they are more or less assembling plants beyond a point. I am looking at it this way, that probably in a couple of years, India would be in a better position to not only manufacture for its own demand, but also to export to other countries, because we will also be able to reach to those economies of scale. It is going to take a little time, but yes, it is going to happen.
I think we should end the Q&A session right now. And I have no words how to thank you. I mean, we are more than grateful to have you here. Before coming to the end, our team has a short video for the audience. I'd like Aditya to play it. So this video was about an event of Amalthea, Game Jam. We believe that we should not just play games but also make games, because sometimes we say that the games out there are very boring, and if I had the platform, maybe I'd make some more interesting game. So Game Jam AD 2021 as an online competition for the same. I urge everyone to check out the platform on HIO. Well, that's what we have got for you today. On behalf of Amalthea 21, I thank our speaker, Mr. Amit Kaushik. We are grateful to have you here. I cannot emphasize more on that. Thank you everyone for joining Amalthea webinars. For more information, be sure to follow our social media pages like YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. Once again, thank you, the speaker, for their time, and signing off for Amalthea, India's largest student-run technical summit. Have a good day.
Thank you, Sakshi, and thank you, Team ML. All the very best.